Some moments demand silence, but what happens when someone laughs instead? Not just a nervous chuckle, but a full-blown, wrong place, wrong time explosion of laughter. At a funeral where grief hangs in the air like fog. In a courtroom packed with tension. Behind a podium during a crisis, with flashing cameras and serious faces all around. And then someone cracks. The laugh escapes. It's awkward, it's viral, and sometimes it changes everything. Because when laughter shows up where it absolutely shouldn't, it doesn't just disrupt the moment, it becomes the moment. But can a single laugh ruin a reputation or make someone beloved forever? And would you have laughed too if you were in their shoes? Watch till the end, because in this video, we're going deep into the moments that made millions gasp, cringe, and laugh when they really weren't supposed to. 14. The funeral prank. It started with a military funeral. Bagpipes played. The coffin was lowered. People wept. But then through a hidden speaker inside the coffin, a man's voice echoed out. "Hello? Hello? Let me out. It's dark in here."
Hello? Hello? Let me out! Where the fuck am I? Hello? Hello? Let me out!
That voice was Shay Bradley, an Irish Defence Forces veteran, and that laugh was his last gift.
I can hear.
He had pre-recorded it before his death, knowing exactly how heavy the air would feel, and he wanted to break it. What followed was a wave of shocked silence, then raw, uncontrolled laughter through tears.
Hello again. Hello.
People clutched each other, crying and laughing all at once. It wasn't just a prank. It was who he was, a man who believed laughter could be healing, even at the most tragic moment. That video didn't just go viral. It gave millions permission to find light in grief. And still, no one at that funeral could forget the sound of Shay's last joke from the grave. 13. Kamala's laugh slip. It was one of the tensest press conferences of 2022. Vice President Kamala Harris stood alongside Polish President Andrzej Duda to address questions about the refugee crisis sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Then, a reporter asked a straightforward question. How would the U.S. support Ukrainian refugees?
Is the United States willing to make a specific allocation for Ukrainian refugees?
Before answering, Harris let out a short, sudden laugh. It wasn't loud, it wasn't mocking, but it was weird.
I can first.
And uncomfortable. The timing couldn't have been worse. Cameras captured it. Clips spread online. People asked, why is she laughing at this? Her defenders said it was nervous energy. Her critics said it was tone deaf. Either way, that awkward burst of laughter turned a serious message into a meme. It didn't matter how detailed her answer was after that. The moment had already escaped into the internet, and it stuck, reminding everyone how thin the line can be between being human and being inappropriate when you're holding the mic. 12th. Fratessi's Fbomb live TV has no mercy for slip-ups, especially when emotions run high. David Fratesi had just scored a massive goal in a heated match against Barcelona. He was fired up, sweating, pumped, and as he stood for a live post-match interview on CBS Sports, he dropped the F word without even blinking. I just told him, Fu Ingo, pass me the ball. Silence hit the studio for a split second. Then Thierry Henry, Micah Richards, and Jamie Carragher burst into uncontrollable laughter.
If I don't score, I'm fucking.
Micah fell backward in his chair. Henry leaned out of frame. They weren't mocking Fratesi. They were reacting like any friend would when something raw and unfiltered escapes at the wrong time. But because it was live, and because it was sports, and because the moment was supposed to be about strategy and technique, it turned into an epic case of the wrong kind of laugh at the wrong kind of moment. 11th. BBC Versus. Uranus. The universe is vast, and sometimes very childish. BBC presenter Owen Shipton was delivering a straight-faced report on space research. The segment was about a new probe heading toward Uranus, but the moment he tried to say it out loud, he cracked, "Uranus. Hey, Uranus will be probed in a... heh." He tried to hold it together. He couldn't. Laughter trickled out between words, and within seconds, he had to stop talking altogether. The camera awkwardly cut to weather. But it was too late. The internet had already clipped the moment. Some called it immature, others completely understood. Because the truth is, saying Uranus with a straight face on live TV is an Olympian challenge. And when it fails, it's gold. 10th, Alpaca Chaos. Live live animals on live TV are always a gamble. And on one unforgettable episode of ITV's This Morning, the gamble didn't pay off. Moments before the segment began, the show's adorable guest, an alpaca, decided to relieve itself all over the studio floor. The smell hit the crew before the cameras even rolled. The hosts, completely unprepared, tried to keep a straight face. They failed spectacularly. The laughter started slow, then became contagious. The guest expert looked mortified. The camera operator struggled to keep steady. One host tried to read the script while gagging. It was pure chaos. And yet, viewers couldn't look away. Because while the topic of the day might have been something serious, maybe climate or agriculture or animal therapy, the only thing anyone remembered was the poop, the panic, and the laughter that followed. 9th, judge can't stop laughing. You expect a courtroom to be serious, stoic, controlled. But on an episode of Court Cam, the entire courtroom watched in disbelief as the judge mid-trial started laughing uncontrollably. It happened after a defendant complained that the guards were being too rough and then slipped in a bizarre line about not being able to eat his muffins. It made no sense. It caught everyone off guard. The judge tried to regain composure. He failed. He laughed into his sleeve. He turned red. He apologized. But the more he tried to stop, the harder it got. The bailiff looked away, biting his cheek. The court reporter smirked behind her laptop. And the defendant, unaware, kept ranting about muffins. Eventually, the judge had to call for a break. That clip went viral, not because justice wasn't served, but because it reminded everyone that even the most powerful people sometimes break down in the most human, ridiculous ways. 8. Cohen's soda spill. You know things are about to go sideways when a host starts shouting, "Oh my God," mid-interview. Andy Cohen, always lively and fast-talking on Watch What Happens Live, had just sat down with Connie Britton when it happened. A clumsy reach for his Diet Cherry Coke, a missed grip, and then boom, the drink spilled everywhere. Ice cubes clattered across the table. The liquid drenched cue cards and splashed toward Connie's dress. She jumped back with a shriek. Andy started laughing, almost hysterically. The crew scrambled with towels. The laughter didn't stop. It was one of those moments where no script, no format, and no prep could fix what had just happened. It was chaos, but it was real. And maybe that's why people loved it. Because when a host loses it, it gives everyone else permission to do the same. 7. Deck's Big Bush Line. Live from the jungle, Deck Donnelly had no idea he was about to go viral. While co-hosting I'm a Celebrity, "Get me out of here," he casually commented on a contestant's struggle to navigate through dense bushes. Harmless, right? Until he added, "That's a really big bush." That's when his co-host Ant McPartlin paused, glanced sideways, and grinned. Deck caught it too late. The audience cracked up. The crew lost it. Even Deck buried his face in the cue cards, laughing so hard he nearly missed the next segment. What was meant to be a simple observation suddenly turned into one of the most hilariously misinterpreted moments on live television. The internet ran with it. Memes, rewinds, replays. Deck didn't intend to say anything suggestive, but the timing, the setting, and the double meaning were too perfect. And it became one of those clips that just keeps coming back every year. 6. Tom Cruise's Oprah couch. Chaos. It was supposed to be a standard celebrity interview. In 2005, Tom Cruise appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show to promote his latest film, and, more notably, his relationship with Katie Holmes. But no one was prepared for what followed. As Oprah asked about his love life, Cruise, suddenly overwhelmed with energy, jumped up onto her couch, fists pumping, grinning wildly. "I'm in love," he shouted over and over. The audience screamed. Oprah looked half delighted, half bewildered. And the internet? It went into meltdown. Memes exploded. Parodies aired for years. What crews saw as a passionate, spontaneous gesture came off to many as unhinged. And it marked the beginning of a major shift in his public image. The moment became iconic, not for its romance, but for how quickly a superstar can go from charming to cringy on live television. 5. Caitlyns' press room crack press conferences after games are usually stiff affairs, stat lines, play breakdowns, a few canned jokes. But Caitlin Clark, one of college basketball's brightest stars, found herself caught off guard by something spicier. A reporter trying to lighten the mood cracked an X-rated joke about handling balls under pressure. For a moment, Caitlyn blinked, processing. Then boom laughter. She leaned back in her chair, completely losing it. Her teammates followed. The media room erupted. It wasn't the joke itself that made the clip go viral. It was the totally human, totally relatable way Caitlyn reacted. There was no fake professionalism, just real shock, real laughter, and a shared moment of, did that really just happen? It gave people a break from the polished athlete image and reminded everyone that even the most elite players are still just people trying to survive press day without cracking up. 4th State Department laugh moment. Matthew Miller had one job: deliver U.S. State Department briefings with composure. And he usually did, until a question came in that was so absurd, so laced with irony, he couldn't help it. The reporter asked if the U.S. had learned its lesson from previous intelligence leaks, right after referencing a mistake that hadn't even been acknowledged yet. Miller tried. He pressed his lips. He blinked slowly. And then he laughed. Not a loud guffaw, but a small, sharp, "Are you serious?" kind of laugh that said more than any answer could. The room froze. Cameras zoomed in. Some reporters looked uncomfortable. Others smirked. That laugh made headlines not because it was disrespectful, but because it peeled back the curtain for a second. It showed that even government spokesmen, with all their rehearsed answers, sometimes hit a wall of ridiculousness so thick, the only response is laughter. 3. The Crow. Call ban. In 1975, Australian TV legend Graham Kennedy decided to mimic a crow during a live product advertisement. "Coo!" he screamed, with an exaggerated roll. But here's where it gets wild. The noise he made sounded almost exactly like a crude expletive. The station went quiet. The control room panicked. And within days, Kennedy was banned from ever appearing live on air again. At the time, it was considered a scandal. But years later, people look back and laugh not because the joke was edgy, but because it was such a bizarre, rebellious moment on primetime TV. Kennedy wasn't mocking anyone. He was just being Graham. And in doing so, he carved out a moment in broadcast history where laughter collided headfirst with censorship and left a dent. 2. Into Gloria breakdown. It was supposed to be a sympathetic interview. A Belgian TV host was speaking with a man whose vocal cords had been damaged in surgery, leaving him with a squeaky, cartoon-like voice. At first, the host held it together. He nodded respectfully, took notes, but then mid-answer he cracked. The first giggle slipped out. Then another. He apologized. Tried again. But it was over. The entire audience could feel it. The kind of laugh you're desperate to stop but physically can't. What made it worse was how sincere the guest was, completely unaware of how his voice sounded to others. Here's the twist. It turned out the whole thing was fake. It was a satirical sketch from the show Into Gloria. But because the acting was so convincing, millions believed it was real. People were horrified, outraged, then relieved, and maybe a little bit amused. It raised questions about empathy, cruelty, and the strange boundary where laughter meets guilt. 1. SNL laugh collapses. There's a secret joy to watching comedians break character, especially on live TV, and Saturday Night Live has built an entire legacy on those moments. Jimmy Fallon was one of the worst offenders. He'd start laughing mid-sketch, especially when paired with Horatio Sanz. One of the most legendary moments, a Christmas-themed sketch where Fallon and Sanz couldn't hold it together as they sang an off-key holiday song with ridiculous lyrics. Then there's Bill Hader, playing the absurd city correspondent Stefan. Every time he delivered his list of bizarre New York clubs, he'd cover his mouth, look away, and laugh into his palm. Viewers didn't mind. In fact, they loved it. Because it was honest. It reminded everyone that comedy isn't always polished. Sometimes it's funnier when the people telling the joke can't even get through it without losing it themselves. Sometimes laughter saves us. Sometimes it betrays us. But it always reveals something real. If this video made you smile, laugh, cringe, or just feel more human, then let us know. Comment below, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon too, so you don't miss the next real story that makes us laugh when we're probably not supposed to.